Well, we are so excited to have on Justin Lee Miller from Interlochen. Justin
Yes.
has a BFA from the University of Michigan. He's been on Broadway in stuff like My Fair Lady, The Phantom of the Opera, On the Town, all kinds of wonderful regional stuff. And has been at Interlochen now for 4 years, where they have lots of different program areas that we're going to talk about. We'll spend most of our time talking about the Arts Academy, but we may talk a little bit about the summer program, a couple different things, the postgraduate gap year program, etc. Justin, welcome on the pod. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. I'm so excited to be on this podcast. Many old friends and people from the
Yes.
business, I've watched your podcast, and it's really fantastic conversation you've got
Uh,
going here.
so nice of you
It's
to say.
great.
Yeah, it's so fun to make this introduction. Okay, so let's before we get into Interlochen itself, do you want to just give us a bit about your journey here? So any fun facts from that bio along the way and how you ended up in the position that you're in?
Sure. So I was a young person from a regular high school with regular parents, not
Yep.
people in the arts, and I got sucked into the drama club like many other kids,
Yep.
and ended up at the University of Michigan, and then went on to New York. Worked on Broadway, worked in national tours, and I did a little bit of crossover into the opera world. So
Uh-huh. I saw
I
that. Yeah.
did productions of Porgy and Bess at the Met and other places around the world. So I've seen a lot of aspects of the business. And then
Uh-huh.
probably about 10 years ago, I got a master's in musical theater and decided that I wanted to teach, and eventually ended up here as the director of musical theater here at Interlochen. So this is I am the first person to hold this job, and it's an adventure every day.
Super cool. Well, we'll get into the adventure. So, I want to dive specifically into what Interlochen has to offer, but I'd love to maybe start off because you mentioned, hey, I went to a regular high school. I also went to a regular high school, right? But if I'm
Mhm.
if I'm a young listener, or if I'm the parent of such a young listener, maybe I'm somewhere in the 12 to 16 range, and I'm considering the possibility of a performing arts school. Could you give me like what, in terms of your reasoning, why would or wouldn't you think it's appropriate for a kid to attend a performing arts school? Like, what's the advantage and disadvantage of looking at an Interlochen?
Yeah, so at an Interlochen, we have both the camp, which happens in the summertime, and we have
Yep.
the academy, which is a boarding school. It's a performing arts boarding school.
Yep.
I think that the kids who come to the boarding school, they have really decided early on that they want to commit themselves to this art form. They
Uh-huh.
love it, and you get a more intense experience. So you
Yep.
get the ensemble experience. So a lot of the kids who come here, even if they came liking musicals,
Mhm.
things like Lion King Jr. or things like that,
Yep.
they may find that they really like Shakespeare, or
Yep.
that they really like other kinds of theater, or they like film, or they like things that they never even thought about
Yep.
when they first started getting into theater. The other side, we're offering more intense training. So offering voice classes, we're offering dance classes, we're
Yep.
offering, something that you're going to 4 days a week, as opposed to maybe a dance team that you go to only on the weekends or you have limited exposure to. You're doing it like 24/7.
And what does that look like in terms of the balance of sort of required high school courses or other academic offerings along with the musical theater and acting training?
Yeah, so it's a regular high school, so they have to take chemistry and English and
Uh-huh.
history and all of that stuff. And then the second half of the day, they're in their arts classes.
Uh-huh.
And Interlochen, we're coming up on our 100th anniversary, so we've been around for quite a while.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful campus up in the woods of northern Michigan. It's very isolated and safe
Mhm.
and beautiful up here. We are located between two big lakes, so
Mhm.
it's
Interlachen, I'm sure
yeah,
that's familiar.
Interlaken.
Green Lake,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a an airport, so the kids are flying in from all over the country. Actually, from all over the world. We have students as far away as South Korea, China, the Middle
Mhm.
East, all kinds of places.
Mhm. But
Yeah,
and as you said, it's about half the day is academics, about half in terms of the musical theater curriculum. How does it
yeah,
work in terms of, you know, joining Interlochen at different ages? So sort of whatever the freshman class is, the sophomore class, the junior class, the senior class, right? It seems like you have the ability to join at different times. How does that work in terms of like, are all the freshmen taking acting one together? It's something like exactly acting one, but that idea of
yeah,
with freshmen, or how does that work?
yeah. So We prefer for the students to come as early as they can, as soon as they
Mhm.
figure out this is what they want to do. So we prefer to get you in your freshman, sophomore, or junior year,
Yep.
so that we have some time to work with you. Because as your listeners know, the college process starts really at the beginning of senior year.
For sure. I would say now it even starts often junior year. That people at least start preparing, or at least looking ahead toward it. That they're junior
Yeah.
year now. Yeah.
So for someone to come to us just for their senior year, they really have to be
Hmm.
pretty organized and together already,
Yep.
because we won't have enough time to work with them.
Yep.
We'll have a couple months of school to get going, and it's
But
better if they
it,
come a little earlier.
and if I do join as a senior, am I going back and taking any of like the sophomore, junior level
No, no,
acting
no.
classes? No, you got to dive
If you
in.
come as a senior, you're in with the seniors right away, and you're working on big things.
Yep.
Um, the other thing that's better about our program is that we cast everybody in something. So if you
Uh huh.
might be at a regular high school, you know, you might not get into the musical, and you might run off and go do chess club or sports or
Hmm.
something. Um, Here, every semester, everyone is cast in a play or a musical, and
Hmm.
everyone is doing something every semester that they're here. And
Yep.
that's really important. We really feel, especially for the freshmen and sophomores that are, starting out and it's highly competitive,
Yep.
that they have an opportunity to be on stage, to be in things, to start working right away.
Totally makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And then how rigorous are the academics, right? I basically, do the academics adjust at all, when they're in the crazy production schedule? Is there an understanding of like, hey, we're doing this, and so this is tech week, or we're all in it together, or is it basically this is the same normal high school? You got to test, you got to test.
I would say that it depends on what school you came from. Some of our kids come from really elite private schools where it's
Yeah.
really tough, and they come here and find that it's easy.
Yeah.
Some kids come from public schools and they're like, "Oh, this is harder than my old school." So it
Uh-huh.
really depends on where you're coming from. I would
Yeah.
say it is strenuous enough that the students are prepared to go to any school, including Ivy League schools,
Uh-huh.
including performing arts conservatories, the
Yep.
wide range.
And you mentioned a couple classes, but can you just take me a little bit more through the MT curriculum, maybe the MT, and then how it differs from acting? I mean, I know you're running the MT, but basically, what would my
Right.
day as an MT be? What would my day as an actor be from an artistic perspective?
Right. So the acting students, all students who come to Interlochen take acting. And
Hmm.
if there's anything that I want the listeners to know, is that our program is an acting based
Yep.
program. So everybody takes acting every semester, and the classes are mixed with musical theater and acting majors.
Hmm.
So there is no
Not a
differentiation
hard
here.
line between the two.
There's not a hard line.
Uh-huh.
And I know at some of the schools that you interview, there are hard lines between
Hmm.
programs. So we're all mixed in together, and all students are required to audition for all productions. So the
Yep.
actors actually have to prepare a musical theater audition,
Yep.
and the musical theater kids have to prepare the acting audition, which
Yep.
means reading Shakespeare, reading George Bernard Shaw, reading,
Yep.
ancient plays, like Electra.
Hmm.
So it is a comprehensive, wide ranging theater education.
Yep. Really
Yeah.
cool.
And
Really.
so to add to that, so
Yeah.
everybody takes acting. And then in addition to that, the musical theater kids will take singing lessons, a vocal studio class, and they'll also take dance classes on top of that. So they're
Yep.
taking all three areas.
And if you are one of those straddlers, you have the a possibility as an actor to kind of dabble in, hey, I want to take a song class, I want to take a dance class, even though I'm mostly focused on the acting. Or would you then just be a musical theater major who's an acting focused musical theater major?
Yeah, I mean, the students here are very young. It's easy to change majors if you find
Yep.
something that you're interested in. And we even have students change majors. Like I had a student last year who was in musical theater who is now a percussion major.
Uh
And
huh.
sometimes he'll come back and play for our shows, like he played in Natasha Pierre with us.
Yep.
But it's possible to change majors here, even within the other programs.
Really cool. Well, I
Yeah.
guess that's that perfect segue to my next question, which is just like, I'm interested, especially from the perspective of a parent. You mentioned this idea that the students likely are pretty serious at this point about musical theater or about acting if they're saying, "Hey, I'm coming at 14, 15, 13, whatever age I'm coming." What do you feel like the goals of an Interlochen student are in general? Are most of the people who begin attending freshman year doing so because they know for sure, hey, I picture a career in musical theater. At least I think that's where I am. Are many of them still just exploring? Like, do people show up and go, I like musical theater, but I don't know if it's for sure for me? I mean, and then I'm going to talk more about the paths after that. But basically, on the entry in, how certain do you feel like most students are or should be by the time they attend if they're 14, 15?
I think they're really sure. I think it's the thing that they're most passionate about. And there's a wide range of students. Like we'll get students who are already in boarding school somewhere else and they
Right.
just get into the musicals and or the plays and they just love it. And it's not a big adjustment to come here.
Yep.
We'll have some students are child actors and
Hmm.
they're going through their kind of teenage years. And as you well know, for child actors, once you become a teenager, you're in this weird gray zone where you're not an adult yet, but you're also not,
Hmm.
4'9"
Sophisticated.
anymore,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So a lot of them are kind of coming here to keep working on their skills and kind of grow up a little bit.
Yep.
Um, Other students just find themselves. Some come as actors and figure out, oh, I actually can dance. I have
Uh-huh.
ability as a dancer, or vice versa. Some people will come in as a singer and find out, oh, I like this on camera class that I'm taking,
Yeah. Totally makes sense. But then I'd love to hear about, as they graduate, I know, of course, there will be students who do all the different paths of, let's maybe pick three paths of one going off to a muggle school and going to Harvard and whatever, doing that life. Of course, there'll be some that do that. There'll be some that will attend those rigorous BFA programs who will look at the Michigans and the Carnegie Mellons and all those kind of schools. Are there a lot that think to themselves, hey, after 4 years of pretty intensive training here, I might be ready just to hit the ground running and do the business, right? Are many of them looking at specifically BFAs, or what are the different paths that you see
I would
people
say
go
they
through?
look at BFAs, they look at BAs. A couple of those programs out there are Bachelor of Music.
Sure. We'll
They're
lump
looking
BFAs
at,
and BMs together with the level
yeah,
of intensity, but
yes.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I would say most of them in the musical theater track are looking at BFA musical theater, and some change their mind.
Yeah.
So each person is different, and each person comes with their own background, and so we talk to them. There's no generalities here. We are talking. It's a very bespoke experience.
Yeah.
We talk to each person. We're talking to the parents. We're looking at their goals and all of that. So
But I guess I'm wondering is like, do you find anybody who starts freshman year, and obviously it's not the exact same training that you're going to get your freshman year of college when you're talking about freshman year of high school,
mhm,
but does
mhm.
anyone feel like, hey, after 4 years, I don't necessarily want another 4 intensive years of more training? Like, we had Krista Rodriguez on the pod. I think it was
Mhm.
OSHA or LACSA. She went to another performing arts high school, and then that was her experience at college. She was like, did one semester. She's like, I want to go work. I'm done. I've trained a lot already. I'm ready.
Yes, I would say that different faculty have different opinions. My opinion is when you're ready to start working, just go ahead and start working.
Uh-huh.
And that, for me, once you turn 18, this is my personal opinion. I think other faculty might say other things. If you're 18 and you're ready to go, you're ready to go.
Yep.
And some people even find when they're in college at NYU, sophomore year, they're like, I got to get out of here.
Yep.
I've got to start working. And it's time to work when it's time to work. And I think,
Yep.
especially if the kids, if you start doing auditions after you turn 18, after you've graduated from high school, if you get hired, I
Yep.
remember this story of Jonathan Groff. I was doing summer stock with him back when he was 18, and he had just graduated from high school, and it was like me and Rob Rokicki were in this production of Ragtime with
And
him.
now, former MTCA coach Robert KU would continue. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so he was asking us, I don't know, I booked this national tour, but I also got into college. Should I go
Uh-huh.
and do this national tour? And we were like,
Are you
dude,
crazy?
go do the national
Yeah.
tour.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to college to do.
Yep.
And so the rest is history. He went off and started working young, and he just never stopped working.
Yeah. And I think there's, to me, an even stronger argument to there if you've had 4 years of intensive high school training. That's, or 3 years or whatever. I think sometimes the fear of starting working, if you just right out of high school start working because you're so castable in one thing, but you don't have any training, you sort of wonder, well, what are you going to be able to fall back on? If you've had 4 years, or sometimes it's 5 years if you do a year of college, you might
Mhm.
feel like, I do think there's maybe a little more training to fall back on there where you go, I think I do have the tools. It's not just one lucky job, but I really feel like I could go from here.
Yes. Now, the flip side of that argument is for parents who are like, well, my child needs something to fall back on. If you
Yeah,
have a 4-year degree in anything,
it's such.
anything, you could go to law school, medical school, engineering, nurse. You could do a lot, business school. You could do a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Totally agree.
So
In the way that sometimes I will tell parents, "Hey, I don't think that minor that you're looking at is as important of a quote unquote fallback as you think it is. That you have the words of the minor, but having the 4-year degree is. I mean, there are some jobs that you can't get without a 4-year degree, or very difficult to get without a 4-year
yeah,
degree, even to get a
absolutely.
BFA.
And, just to put things in perspective, I graduated from University of Michigan. Of my class of 24 people, I think
Mhm.
5 of them are attorneys now.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say, I was like, they're all still working in the musical theater, right?
no,
100%
only
of your class
yes,
wants
I
to.
think a
Half of them,
handful.
in a
Yeah.
couple of years are done. Yeah, for sure. That's the way it works.
But I would say the other thing that's interesting about that class was most of the people, what they're doing professionally, they actually were doing in undergrad.
Uh-huh.
So the guys who are writing musicals are still writing musicals. Guys
Mhm.
who are music directing in college are music directing on
Fun.
Broadway.
You're
The
like, "You always
teachers
were
were
kind of an
teach.
entrepreneur, and now you run your own business." You're like, "Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of how it
exactly.
works." That's
Yep.
well, and we
Yep.
always talk about the transferable skills. This is true in college, it's true in life too. The things that you do that make you successful in musical theater, of course, are gonna transfer to other jobs.
Yeah.
You want communicators and
I
all the
mean, one guy who's Mike Masalam, who just won a couple Tonys this last season. He was producing musicals in like sophomore, junior year of college.
Yep,
He was.
yep.
So it's kind of crazy.
So cool. And let's talk a little bit about the BFA. So imagine a good chunk. I don't know if you know the exact percentage of that pie of what are the muggles and what are the people who potentially go right off to working. But imagine the biggest chunk of that pie is going to be people who look at BFA, BM in more intensive training going
Yeah,
forward.
most of
What
them
does that
go
process
for.
look like with you?
Yeah, so we have a full counseling office, and the other great side about our school is all of our counselors are counselors in the performing arts,
Uh huh.
and that's all they do. So they're not doing the what a regular high school counselors do. They're
Yep.
looking at all of the schools, and as you probably tell your students now in 2024, we're applying to many more schools than we
For sure.
used to.
Yep.
And I know the parents that are out there listening are thinking, "Oh yeah, I applied to like 3 colleges."
Yep.
We're not in that world anymore.
Justin, I'll
You
tell
know.
you, we don't even tell our students that anymore. That has gotten out so much. We used to, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. 20 years ago, it used to be pulling teeth to get them to add an eighth school, a ninth school, a 10th school, saying you need more than a handful. I'm telling you. Now they come into us. That really, that's that cat's out of the bag. They do
Yeah.
come in knowing I'm going to do 20 schools. And we go, okay. Some of them say, hey, my friend did 40 schools. And I go, well, you don't have to do 40 schools.
Yeah,
Calm
that's too
down.
much.
That's ridiculous, But they'll hear these sort of large numbers and the inflation begins from year to year. But
Yeah.
that's really changed in
So
terms of the expectations. Yeah.
yeah, so just back to your question, our staff is laser focused on all of that stuff. That's basically all they do is performing arts
Yep.
admissions. And
Yep.
so not only do the faculty on the uh, acting side and musical theater side, not only are we all experts and we know all of these people
Yep.
after years in the business, um, are also our counselors know because it's all they do. So they're
Yep.
they're pretty on the ball.
And then tell me,
But
I want to talk about the summer program too, but first tell me about that gap year program. So I noticed on the website that you have what's sort of the genesis of this? I mean, it's something I always wish every high school student could take a gap year before they auditioned for these colleges. It's
yes,
crazy when they're doing their prom and whatever, but tell me a little bit about that.
yeah, some people just aren't ready, or you know, we've had kids who were graduated high school at 17 and just didn't feel mature enough to go.
Uh-huh.
Or sometimes we'll have kids who, excuse me, figured out late that they wanted to do it and then sort of missed their deadlines, but they're really talented and want to
Uh-huh.
give it another shot. Um,
And are they
there,
taking with the high school students or are they in their own
yeah, they're
program?
all in the same. We put them
Uh-huh.
in with the seniors. They're in the shows. They're in with everything.
It's just they don't
The
have the academics alongside of it.
They don't, but the good thing about them is that since they're already high school graduates, they can take as many theater classes as they want
Uh-huh.
because they've got all day.
Uh-huh.
They don't have to worry about a chemistry exam in the
Yep.
morning. They just take a ton of classes and absorb a lot.
That's really
And
cool.
everyone who's done it has loved it.
And is it mostly students who were Interlochen seniors, maybe they came a little late and then jumped on, or is it some students who graduated high school and are come meeting you for the first time as a gap year
It's
student?
it's a mix. It's
Yeah,
a mix.
yeah,
Sometimes it's somebody who just came here for camp and they know what we are, and so they were like, I'm going to do a gap year there. Yeah.
Yep. But so tell me a little about the summer camp in terms of who that's for and kind of what that serves.
Yeah, so the summer camp, we have a bunch of programs. So we have 1 week intensive programs. We have 3 week programs that are geared towards skills. We have the summer musicals, which will be um, this summer, we're going to do for the intermediates, which is middle school age, we're doing The Secret Garden. And for the high school, we're doing Beautiful, the Carole King musical. So we will put on have a combination of things. We will put on full scale musicals. That's
Yep.
one program, and we'll also put on uh, more workshop style things where you're doing a review at the end, like a
Yep.
showcase at the end.
Yep.
So it's a combination of different programs.
And you said broken down into basically middle school and high school or the age
Yes, we also
bracket?
have a junior program as well. Yep.
Junior
So
for
that's
even
like
younger than middle
yeah,
school.
that's like elementary school
Oh my
kids.
gosh. And they're
Yeah.
putting
So
on
you
plays and musicals?
they do. Yep, they
Ooh.
do. Yep.
Oof.
And so we do also do plays and musicals. So you could apply for musical theater, you could apply for plays.
Awesome.
And also there are other programs here too. So if you wanted to come for 3 weeks of musical theater, then you could stay for another 3 weeks of saxophone. I mean,
Uh-huh.
there's any number of combinations of things you
Gotcha.
could do for the
Yeah.
summer.
And is it the same faculty at the arts camp, at the summer camp that are there during the regular year?
Some like I'm here year round, but
Mhm. Some people
this
get a
year we're
summer
going
camp.
to have just to give kids an idea. Like we're going to do like in recent years we've worked with Joyce Chittick, who I don't know if you know her from New York, but she worked on Beautiful on Broadway, and she will stage Beautiful here.
So cool.
Or she was in the revival of Anything Goes, and she choreographed Anything Goes here.
Mhm.
So the people last summer they did Wonderful Town, and actually Joyce Chittick and Rick Fogno actually they met in the in on Wonderful Town revival
Uh-huh.
and 20 years ago and got married, and now they were here working as a team
And they
putting it
renewed their
up.
vows right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
So
it.
it's kind of a little bit of an anniversary working with the kids,
Yep.
and um and it's the same on the other side too. We have people on the acting side who went to Juilliard and did Shakespeare in the Park and
Yep.
Shakespeare on Broadway and all that kind of stuff. So
Yep.
it's it's working with a college level faculty,
Totally.
but in a high school setting.
Totally. All right, we're gonna take a short break, and on the back end, we're gonna talk a little bit about the admission process for Interlochen. So we're back in a flash. Okay, we are back with Justin Lee Miller, and we're talking a little bit about the audition and admission process. So first, just want to talk about what you require and how the audition works in terms of how I would audition for you, especially for the high school program.
Yeah, so it's a lot like the college program admissions. If you're thinking about doing your pre-screens, these videos that you make at home and you show what you can do in areas of acting, singing, and dancing.
Yep.
So there are some monologues. We ask for two contrasting monologues from published plays.
Yep.
We ask for um, usually one or two songs, to just show what you can do,
Yep.
and then a dance video or a movement video. Even if you're not a strong dancer, just show yourself moving in space.
Yep.
Could be gymnastics, could be all kinds of things.
Yep. I love
So
that. I love that your requirements. I think unlike some of the schools, and maybe this speaks toward your acting focus. The fact that you require two monologues and only require one song. Often that's the inverse, where schools will say we need two songs and one monologue or whatever. The fact that you require those two monologues, I think that is indicative of some kind of focus on acting.
yes, and also, when they come here, they're going to take serious acting classes with serious acting teachers. So we
Yep.
really have to see, can you memorize a text? Can
Yep.
you what can you do already? That
Yep.
doesn't mean that everyone has to come in polished. We're
Of
just
course.
looking for potential.
Yep. And it seems like the auditions are primarily via that video online, but you have the possibility to schedule an in-person audition.
Yeah, and those are great too, because you get a chance to, if you fly in or drive up with your parents, you get a chance to look around the campus, and
Yep.
you can, tour and do an audition all at the same time.
Yep, I love it. And what are we talking about numbers wise in terms of how difficult it is to get in? As much as you want to share, but the idea of like how many applications you get and then how many people are accepted each year.
Um, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'll say this, that we are looking for, it's different from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
And um, we I'll tell you how you definitely not getting in. If you're a terrible student with bad grades who never comes to class, you're not getting in.
Not gonna happen.
Okay.
All right, love it.
So one of the things that we weigh very heavily is your grades,
Uh-huh.
and your ability to meet deadlines, and for your recommenders to say this is a top academic student.
And is there a minimum GPA? Is there like a or baseline they should be looking
I
at?
don't think that there is,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not the decider on that.
Yep.
Really, what I do is I look at artistic portfolios, and then admissions does the rest. So
Yep.
I'm really only looking at the artistic side. I might ask the question like, do they have good grades? But
Yep.
actually,
You
admissions
let them
does
deal with
all
it.
of
Yeah.
that. I'm
Yep.
only looking at artistic things. I'll tell you what excites me: a lot of energy,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of energy, a lot of energy in the dance video. The first thing that I click on is the dance video,
Uh-huh.
because I can see, can you act without saying anything?
Mm-hmm.
Can you act without saying anything? Can you move? Do you have a lot of energy? Are you creative? Are you an expressive dancer? I learn a lot. And actually, I learn a lot about acting even before I click on that monologue video.
Totally. Yep.
I first click on the dance video, and I'll say this as well. We try to get diverse classes every year. So we try to get classes where people are geographically diverse, we try to get a good gender mix every year. So we're really looking at, if somebody applies and they don't get in, you know, they can apply again the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's just simply, we need a good mix that year.
Mm-hmm.
We need a
No, and
good mix that year.
I love that you speak toward energy. I mean, that is something that I think has really changed over my time doing this. Is that I feel like the problem with young actors often was too much energy, too much nerves. This is maybe 20 years ago. They were coming in hot, and it was often about, can we ground this? Can we make this truthful? I don't know if it's a social media or if it's just the way that things have changed, but I do feel like more and more of our students are like too chill or too small with their choices. When I'd be like, okay, but it's theater. Get out there. Let's make a theatrical
Yeah.
choice. Let's be bold. Let's be brave. That didn't used to be the problem 15, 20 years ago. And now it is more like, get out. I'm so excited when someone's too big and over the top. I'm like, okay, I can pull that back. That's exciting.
Yes,
There's
that's
something
it
here to
exactly.
work
It's
with.
easier to pull something back than it is to make something grow.
Yeah.
Um,
It's, yeah, there's some fear of embarrassment or some fear of, I don't know, looking corny. I don't know what it is. That there's a different kind of coolness than I think it used to be back in the
mhm.
day.
And
Yeah.
it's not a. I don't want anyone to look at applying to Interlochen as a scary process. In fact,
Hmm.
you put yourself out there. We'll look at your grades, and we'll look at your videos, and the point is not to be a finished product. If you're a finished product, you don't need to come to school
Right.
here.
Yep.
You
You're a
know,
finished product at 15. What's wrong with you? I mean,
yeah,
that's a problem in life. If you're finished at 18, it's hard enough. You're finished at 15. Uh-oh. Yeah.
yeah, and I think I also like to hear that from colleges as well. If the
Hmm.
college says, we're looking for people with potential, with
Yes.
ambition, if they say we're looking for a polished, finished product, then I don't necessarily want to get my kids
Yeah.
going there.
The secret is none of them say that. They're like, all these other programs are cookie cutters. All these other programs are looking for polish. And like, oh, really? No, all the programs talk about, we want potential. We want you to be your authentic self, as they should, as they should. But I'm just saying, yeah, in 200 interviews in, I've not heard a lot of people say, I'm looking for a polished product who's ready to work on day one, who doesn't need any training.
Um,
Oh, you got some
yes.
examples. Justin's going to drop
No,
some
I don't have any
schools.
example, but I think the way for students to find out the truth is to visit
That
the campus and
that's
talk
true.
to the students.
I think that's very well said. I think
Yeah.
it's unlikely that anyone would say that, but you might get a sense of going, hey, this school does seem to be looking a little bit more for a certain thing than another thing. I think that is very fair.
Hmm.
I wasn't wondering, do you find that there's a lot of competition in the performing arts high school world? Meaning, especially, do you see a lot of students applying to many different programs and then deciding between them? Or more students are like, I'm super in love with Interlochen, and if it's not, I'll go to my regular non-performing arts high school?
So it's a small world. There are only three major boarding schools for
Hmm.
musical theater that have musical theater. And then the rest of them are public high schools or
Yep.
they're kind of magnet schools. So there isn't a ton of competition. We have had students from all of those schools come here, and some of
Right.
them just come for the summer, some come to the academy. Um, it's a nice place to be here up here in the woods. So if you're
Yep.
looking for that kind of calm experience, it's a nice place to be. Um, Obviously, public schools are free, and you
Right.
get to sleep in your own bed every night, and
Yep.
pet your dog when you come home from school. But that is its own thing. But also the intensity of studying here is also really great too. So
Yep. What about and I'd love to speak to some of those other schools. When you do see students who are deciding between you and maybe one or two other programs, let's say they are radically talented, they know they want a boarding school, they know they want this intense training, and they're deciding between a couple of the other schools out there. What do you think distinguishes Interlochen from those other schools? Why would somebody say, I'm definitely going to Interlochen because of this? Or if you found, hey, this person's going to this other school, they're going to, I won't name another school, but they're going to another school instead. Do you have a sense of why they might go there instead of to you?
yeah, I would say that the advantages of Interlochen is we have a really strong alumni network.
Hmm.
People stay connected to each other over the years, over the decades. We've even had, guests come back and do master classes with us and people stay connected. It's a big family.
Yep.
I would say it's also the intensity of the training and the quality of the faculty here are just, I think, unsurpassed.
Hmm.
I may be biased, but I would say we're the top program in the country
Hmm.
of our kind.
Hmm.
Um, that said, there are many paths to Broadway, and many people, I try to tell my students this all the time. You're going to go to your first rehearsal for a Broadway show, and you're going to be sitting next to somebody who maybe didn't go to college at all. Maybe they were a comedian or a TV actor
Hmm.
or a ballet dancer that retired from ballet and wanted to do Broadway,
Yep.
or many, many, many other avenues. A rapper nowadays could be
Hmm.
somebody who just was
TikTok
good.
star. Yeah.
Yeah, TikTok star or something. So
Yep.
there are many paths, and this is one path. And I think it's the path for the person wants to, who likes to think, who wants to explore lots of
Hmm.
different kinds of theater, who likes to be around people in other artistic disciplines like writers and musicians and all of that stuff
Yep.
as well, artists, visual artists. So,
And any cons? Are there any things where
mhm,
you go, hey, this is why someone might go to a Walnut Hill or another school instead of
mhm.
Interlochen? It doesn't have to be that school specifically, but are there other schools where someone goes, you know what? I was between you and this other school, and I went with this direction because of this.
Oh, I would say mostly it's like they're also kids. So, like, if your house is closer to one of those other schools and your
Hmm.
mom can come and visit you without having to get on an airplane, I
Yeah.
I think that's a reason to stay close to home.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a good reason. But other than that, I don't see any academic reasons.
Totally. Well, and
Yeah.
that's not, I imagine some of that also depending on the options that you have. Some of what you mentioned may be free. Imagine costs
Mhm.
could factor in there. Let's talk about cost a little bit in terms of the
Yep.
sticker number that I see. Oh my God, is almost $80,000 for boarding students. That's for boarding students. For day students, it's about 44.
Yep.
Talk to me about like what does that initial number look like, and then how do students bring that number down? Whether it's about academic money, artistic money, need based money, and what do most of your students actually end up paying?
Yeah, virtually all of the students have some kind of aid. So
Yep.
the aid is there's merit based and there's uh, income driven aid.
Yep.
So almost no one pays that full sticker price.
Sure.
Now, it is expensive. And the way I think of it personally, admissions won't say this, but I kind of think of it as like a reverse master's degree.
Yep.
Like it's that couple of years that you add on to your education that gives you the edge in your art form.
Yep.
And I don't think that if somebody comes to Interlochen for 2 years and then a BFA for four, I think that's all the education they
That's
need,
right.
really.
Yeah. I mean, they often will say that most of, especially of the most competitive BFA programs, will say this is a terminal degree. They will say for musical theater, you don't need to go get an MFA in musical theater. You
No.
know, in acting, sometimes people get an MFA in acting, but still, I think it would be rare for someone to go to Interlochen for 3 years, get a BFA in acting from a really competitive, and then get another MFA in acting. Like at some point, you're like, you've done the training. It's the same. It is
Right.
the same training again and again. That would be a lot.
Yeah. And I know you've had people on your program who didn't go to college at all.
Hmm.
And they will tell you, or didn't go to college for musical theater at all.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, and they will tell you, the job is singing and dancing.
Yep.
The job is singing and dancing.
Yep.
I think what you get from schools like Interlochen and the best musical theater programs is you
Yep.
get a diversified portfolio. So when you decide to step into film,
Yeah.
you decide to step into other mediums, that you have at least some experience.
Yep.
You
And I
know,
think for people like us, an ability to teach too. I mean, that's where I feel like not only do I know how to do it, but I know how to do it enough to teach myself and therefore other people, that's a helpful skill. That I know other people who are really good, but who maybe go, I don't know why I'm good. I don't quite understand what's working about what I'm doing.
yeah. And when I start looking at AI and I look at what's going to happen with the entertainment landscape of the next decade, 10 years,
Mm,
20 years, I really think that theater as a theater therapy or theater as an activity to bring communities together is going to be really important,
I
because
hope
we
you're right.
will be so inundated by screens that what's it going to be a normal kid anymore?
Yeah.
You've got to interact, you've got to learn to work with other people. And that means really doing things like sports and theater and things where you get together and do stuff with other kids.
I recently heard from one of our alumni parents, as I think a parent of a current freshman, about this is a compliment to the musical theater students. She was like, when you're touring, musical theater colleges, the cool thing is like all the musical theater students, they like look you in the eyes and they really talk to you, and none of the other
Yes.
kids do. And she was telling us this positive story, and I was like, that doesn't sound like that sounds like a damning story about all the other kids who can't look people in the eyes. What's wrong with us as a culture? What's happening to us?
Yeah. And I think I'll tell you what, coming out of COVID, Interlochen really brought literally brought people back to life
Yeah.
who had been zombies
Ugh. Yeah.
living in their own world,
Yeah.
and they actually like went swimming and hung out with their friends and
Mm.
did plays and
Yeah.
danced.
No, it's beautiful. I'd love to speak a little. I mentioned a parent. I'd love to speak towards some of our parent listeners.
Hmm.
Part of the reason we wanted to have you on is I've had a number of requests from parents of younger listeners across the board on what they can do. So not just on the idea of performing arts high schools, but what they can do at this point if I'm a parent of a 13, 14, 15-year-old, right? But I
Hmm.
imagine you encounter this question a lot, and I'd be interested in your take on it, that parents, are kind of wondering whether their child has it, especially at like 14, 15, when it's very young, or whether basically their child should pursue this profession. They're going to go, hey, I'm willing to make this investment of a performing arts high school, but I don't know if my kid has got it or has the potential to make it in this business. So
Hmm.
we get a lot of the version of that question, of course, but by the time students come to us, they've normally made up their mind. Sometimes there's a parent lagging, but normally they're saying, hey, I'm 17, I'm ready to do this. I'm 16, I'm ready to dive in. But how do you deal with that question when you meet a freshman or sophomore and a parent is going, I want to support my kid, but I also don't want to set them up for failure if I don't think they're going to succeed in this business?
um well, one, as you know, no one can predict who's going to have a career.
Hmm.
That someone could go through your program and be the most talented person in it
Well, not our
and never.
program. Our program guarantees success, Justin. Please, our program's the one guarantee for success. No, continue, of course.
No. You could go through and be the most talented kid and then never work, or you don't have the ambition to keep going when
Hmm.
things get rough. I would say no one can answer that for an actor except the actor.
Yeah.
I will also say that the grass is often greener on the other side of the fence. When people use the word muggle, if someone goes to a muggle style job, they may
Yeah.
think back and say, "Oh, I wish I had been an actor." But there are an equal number of actors that said, "God, I wish I was an
I should
engineer
be an
or
accountant.
marine, yeah, or
I'd
marine
love to teach vision
biologist, or
tech. Yeah.
I always want to be an architect or whatever." They all have the grass is always greener,
Yeah.
phenomenon always happens.
Do you guys have any
Mhm.
kind of frank skill assessments? I mean, like, do you do, if a parent says, hey, I just kind of want to get a sense, especially with something like musical theater, where there are some more skill-based stuff, like here's where you are as a dancer, here's where your
Mhm.
your level as a singer. Is there feedback for the parents in that way?
There. There is, and they could come to talk to us at a parent-teacher conference type situation or just email us. But I think the main thing is that when you get advice about your career, you really have to do it one-on-one.
Yeah.
Because if I was with a whole classroom of kids, I'm going
Ooh,
to give a general answer.
of course.
Or even if you
If you're on a
Google,
podcast, you're going to give a general answer.
yes,
Always, yeah.
even if you Google a lot of the questions that are going to mean a lot for you, those answers are not right for the individual. They are right for the general audience.
Yep.
And you must go to somebody, a person, a teacher, a coach, and ask them questions directly and about you specifically.
Yep. Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think we've all, as just people who, educators in this world, we've had a lot of non-public conversations about kind of the difficulty of, a student who loves this but isn't the strongest from a skills perspective. Because I think, at least I always feel like you feel bad going, this is such a talented, it's such a difficult industry, and there's so many talented students who struggle so much. But also, who am I to say this person won't become the most talented person 3 years from now? One, we don't know, and two, even if they don't, even if I am right and I know for sure, hey, this singer is probably never going to be a professional singer. What if they're the greatest casting director that I've just robbed of the opportunity to go to performing arts school and then become a great casting? Like that, those are really tough questions. I know
Right.
to answer on our
And ambition plays a big role. And
end.
like, do you want to stick at it? And I just had a call with Deb Cardona, who was making her Broadway debut in Funny Girl, and
Hmm.
she was like over 50.
Yeah.
And she'd been in the business a long time, done national
Yeah.
tours, lived in New York, grew up in New York, and it was a big moment for her, but she stuck with it. Now,
Yeah.
she also has master's degrees and taught and did all these other things, but um, it really just depends on your desire.
Yep.
Now, I will say this, what I really want to say loud and clear to the parents who are thinking about how to prep for either coming to Interlochen or going to college.
Hmm.
The key things for me would be to take dance classes as early as you can
Hmm.
and to take piano lessons.
Hmm.
For me, first of all, the dance class, it's something that you have, both of those things are things you have to start early to be really great at.
Right. Not easy to
Especially
pick up at 18.
not as easy to pick up at 18 or even if they're required for your college to pick up at, 20, to pick
Yeah,
up piano at 20.
totally. Yep.
I think a lot of parents get wrapped up in taking private voice lessons too early.
Mm,
I think a private piano lesson is more important than a
mm.
private voice lesson early on. It's a skill that once you've acquired it, you can teach yourself music.
Yes.
You don't need a bunch of crutches your whole life.
With the idea that you might never need to be a high-level piano player, but you need to have
Right.
enough musicianship to play along and teach yourself music, even if you're not
Right.
going to be someone who's fully accompanying auditions or that kind of thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
teach yourself music, understand music, play music, appreciate music. Now, what's the downside to taking a bunch of dance classes and piano lessons? There is none.
Hmm. You're
Dance
just laying a
classes are
foundation.
exercise.
Yep. Totally.
You
Yep.
know, you're getting out, you're making friends, you're meeting people, you're dancing, you're moving. And if you take a ton of dance classes and never become a dancer, so be it. You
You're
had a
just that
good
much more
time.
flexible and in better shape. And
Yeah, you're in better
totally.
shape. You met people, you had fun. And also, piano is another thing. Even if you just have it as a life skill, even if you're
Yep.
just playing Christmas songs for your family around, holiday time, that's fine. I think there's too much emphasis, at least to the kids that come to me and are obsessed with college, with private voice teachers who may or may not be doing a great job,
Uh-huh.
and also a little bit. You can always learn to act. Acting is a thing you can learn actually later.
I totally agree. And
Yeah,
relatively quickly, a couple months
yeah,
of acting, you can learn a lot. Yeah.
yeah. And I've taught.
Can't become a
Yeah,
dancer in 2 months. Yeah.
right. I've taught acting classes to adults, people in their
Yep.
40s and 50s, and they
Totally.
can get it,
Of course.
sure. But
And in some ways,
dance,
the stuff that you learn at 18 is going to hit you differently than at 15. Like the stuff that you go, it's tough. It's tough at too young of an age to get the higher level acting concepts, depending on your own maturity level. I feel like sometimes as a student, you weren't quite ready for that acting lesson. You had to hear it now as opposed to then.
yeah. And when you're older, you may have kids, and you may, okay, the father role means something else,
Yeah.
than playing a father when I was, 16.
No, I think that's a really interesting conversation, and I think again tricky in the general of it seems like what you're saying to some extent, if I'm hearing you correctly, about a voice teacher, is that there's potentially more downside to voice lessons that are not productive, that are not expert voice lessons at 14, 15, where you could learn some bad habits, where you're unlikely in a dance class or in a piano class to learn piano incorrectly or something in a way that you're going to have to unlearn. Is that fair to say?
I would say that's fair to say. I would also say that in the world of people who offer classes to teenagers and maybe preteens,
Yeah.
um, what the students often get is just a friend or an adult that teaches them notes,
Right. Who knows? Who likes
as
singing
opposed,
themselves, but is not necessarily a vocal pedagogue.
yeah, so they're not doing necessarily real vocal pedagogy. They're doing a lot of coaching, like
Yeah.
song coaching. Like, let me teach you this Disney song.
Yep.
Well, guess what? If you learn to play the piano, you can teach yourself 100 Disney songs.
That's fair. Totally. We encounter
So,
a lot of students who go, I've been taking voice for 6 years. I'm like, you have? This is
yes,
you, but you haven't taken a voice lesson yet. You haven't really like worked on your voice. You've just been singing. Yeah.
precisely. And
For
this
sure.
colleges will tell you the same things. They'll say, this kid said he's had voice lessons for 6 years.
They've just been singing
But
in the shower, but not in the shower. Whatever. Yeah.
yeah, they've gone to a person every week who has taught them Disney songs.
And of course, not to say there aren't great voice teachers out there for high school students. If you're listening,
Oh,
I'm sure you're one of them. I'm sure you're one of
there
them.
are, and we have them work here every year, and they reflect some of those same things back that they get students here that they're starting from scratch with. Yep.
Yep. I'd love to talk about, when you talk to parents, and especially, I imagine the sort of population of children that you encounter tend to have relatively involved parents. What is your experience out there in terms of the helpful level of parent involvement? Do you find you have a lot of like unhelpful helicopter parents? Do you find you have a lot of families where you wish the parents were more involved or are very involved and you find it very helpful? What is your basic, sort of feeling in terms of how involved in a student's education, especially their college process, parents can be?
It's a mix. It doesn't really bother me when parents contact me a lot. And what I know about moving to New York or LA and becoming a professional actor, you need the support of your family in order to do this career. It's
Mhm.
a mentally, emotionally, and financially strenuous career to choose. So if you have your parents in your corner, I think that's great. And I
Yep.
think I have no issues um, with moms or dads who are calling me a lot and want to get involved. I'm happy to talk with them every day. And I
Mhm.
think the more they stay involved, the more their children, even as they move into young adulthood, are going to have a more stable life,
Yep.
frankly.
I love that. Any last sort of advice to broaden that question out in terms of advice? This could be for parents specifically as they are supporting their children, or it could be an advice for a kid going through this too. Just any other thoughts of advice as sort of families are pursuing this as a career?
Yeah, I would say, um, I think we sort of touched on this, but this advice to be yourself, sometimes that can be a very tricky phrase. I think how I would say, if you're thinking of coming to Interlochen or you're thinking about going to college for musical theater, what we really mean by that is we want to see a unique individual.
Hmm.
And I know that it's very difficult for teenagers because you want to fit in with your
Yeah.
group. You want to be like all of your friends. The way to stand out in Interlochen admissions and college admissions is to be the unique person that I know you are.
Mm.
It is not because some people say, well, my real self is like all these other girls. That's my
Hmm.
real self. I think it's more about letting the unique side of you come out
Uh-huh.
and to not walk into the room um, this fake version of yourself that you think other people want. If something's funny, laugh at it. If
Yeah.
something's not funny, don't laugh at it
Yeah.
because it just makes you seem shallow and fake and just kind of sucking up, and that
Yep.
doesn't do anything.
No, it's great advice. It's great advice, and I think it is one of the toughest questions for them is to figure out, well, what is my unique thing, and how do I tease that out and let that shine, but not necessarily impose it on myself. Sometimes people are jumping to that place where they go, this will be my shtick, and you go, oh, that's not. We don't want that
Well,
either. If it feels like
I
that's like I wear the green hat because I'm the green hat guy, and you're like, okay,
I'll give you just one example. There was
please.
a girl who applied here, and she was into Irish step dancing, and she
Yeah.
did this beautiful Irish step dance video. And after she got in, she said, she started apologizing. She said, "I'm so sorry I didn't get a better dance video. All I had was that Irish step dance video." And I said, "That Irish
That was
step dance
great.
video was what got you in. We
Yeah.
loved it. We
Yeah.
loved it."
Yep.
So you never know. You
Yeah.
never know. You really have to let your unique side out.
That's so well said. All right. Well, if people want more information on you, where should we check it out? Do we like a social media, a website? Where's the best place to look
You
for
know
more?
what? Interlochen.org. You will find me there, and you'll find everything you need to know. And you can go on there and look at you don't even need your parents' permission. You can go on
Oh,
there and look at all the programs and start thumbing through and finding the things that you
you do
connect with.
need your parents' permission to attend, probably. You can't
You
just
do.
go
You
apply
do.
and attend without everyone. But that's Interlachen with a CH in there, if that wasn't clear.
CH. Yep.
Interlachen.
Interlochen.org.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Justin, this was so fun getting to chat with you. Thanks for the time today, man.
All right. Have a good one.